Welcome to School Scene. I'm your host, Dan Bridges, Naperville 203 Superintendent. More than 16,500 students grow, learn, and thrive in our 22 schools across Naperville, Bolingbrook, Lisle, and Woodridge. It's our goal to ensure each student receives a first-class education and graduates well prepared for their next phase of life, whatever that may be. In this episode, we will look at Naperville 203's Illinois Global Scholar Program, which offers a designation to graduating seniors who meet the certificate requirements. So tell me, what is Global Scholar?
So Illinois Global Scholar is a certificate that awards merit on the state-sanctioned transcript to students who demonstrate global competencies.
Okay, so why would students in District 203 really want to be a global scholar, or why would it be important for them?
Well, I think one of the goals that you mentioned for the district is that we want them to be well prepared in life, right, for any career path they choose. And by completing Global Scholar, they're able to address a multicultural environment. They're learning to work with people from all different backgrounds, studying all different content areas, and that gives them an advantage because they're comfortable working across cultural lines. The other part of it that I think is really amazing is their ability to learn some of the soft skills that Randy and I have talked about, and Seth, in the workforce, in being able to reach out to somebody and network, being comfortable drafting a basic email requesting an interview, which a lot of us think is a basic skill that we would just know, but for a lot of the students, they don't. And so it helps them break through their nervousness about that and create those skills that no matter what career path they're going to take, they're going to need.
So Randy, tell me a little bit more about that. When we think about the importance of the Global Scholar Program, its alignment to our district mission and future world of work, tell me why, again, it's so important.
Well, I think it really gives the students an opportunity to pursue a passion. And it puts that in a global context. So as trying to prepare students for college and career, we're a globalized society today. And so they get that neat opportunity to pursue a passion, but also to really learn a set of global competencies that equip them more effectively for both college and career.
Great. So tell me, what does a student have to do to be designated as an Illinois Global Scholar? How does this happen?
Well, I will talk about that. There's four things in the state legislation, but also really the District 203 has. And one of those is 8 globally focused courses. And a Global Scholar Committee has gotten together and has looked at the curriculum in the high schools and has slated courses that are considered globally focused. So students need 8 of those. They have to be from at least 2 different disciplines. So those could involve foreign language, social studies, an international business class, an English literature class that's globally focused. So they have coursework. Secondly, they have to do an area of global collaboration and dialogue, so that students can do this maybe through a virtual platform. Students could do this through travel and interacting with the culture while they're actually there. Thirdly, is the students have this opportunity for globally focused service learning. Not community service, that's something that today prisoners do, but the idea of globally focused service learning is students are informed about what they're actually doing and learn through that process. And then lastly is this thing called the Capstone. And I would love for my colleague to talk about the Capstone.
I'd love to hear more about it. Seth, tell us about the Capstone.
Yeah, so the Capstone is really unique, I suppose, in the scope of projects that a student would do in their high school career. So a student needs to generate a compelling question that is rooted in a specific global context and that is actionable. So an example of that question could be, what is the best way to prevent a future Ebola outbreak in Sierra Leone? As part of the investigation process, students need to connect with 2 on-the-ground experts who are familiar with both the context and the issue. These experts later in the project become reviewers. So a student needs to produce an artifact that not only demonstrates their learning, but that they can take into action to affect change. And so it's a much different thing for a student to have their work reviewed by a teacher like me than it is an expert in the field. In that particular example I gave of the Ebola question, a student last year named Vicky was able to connect with people that worked in Ebola hospitals as members of Doctors Without Borders, as well as volunteers in Ebola hospitals. And so for her, the result of her investigation were actually that there are 7 major factors that contribute to an Ebola outbreak. Among them were a variety of cultural factors. For example, there's a widespread belief that Ebola is a hoax perpetrated by the West. Secondly, that healers, well-minded, touch the dead or touch the sick and then move around. So when she got to the point of really taking action, she decided to create a game where the player is a Doctors Without Borders doctor in an Ebola outbreak has just occurred. And she actually deployed this game with a pre and post test in Sierra Leone, demonstrating that her game was actually effective in increasing knowledge and awareness of Ebola. So pretty amazing stuff.
Amazing things that are happening in the classroom. I mean, this really represents some of the best of what we want out of education, right? Authenticity, real life application, something that they can take with them. Now, I know that Naperville 203, the 3 of you especially, really were leaders in bringing this to Illinois. Tell me a little bit about that process and how that happened.
Well, one of the exciting things was, we had the opportunity, and really the blessing and the conversation we had with you to try to take this to the state. And we were able to bring a group of stakeholders together, people, educators, really has been very teacher and educator driven, but a group of educators together, grade school, middle school, high school, from districts, rural, suburban, urban, from less resourced and more resourced districts, as well as bring in other types of stakeholders to help kind of draft the details of the capstone and how that's assessed, but then also to really put together kind of the components of that legislation. And that was really the beginning of the journey. We were excited to find legislative sponsors. It was neat as a government teacher to kind of do legislation versus teach about legislation, which I think is the exciting thing with our kids, is that they can learn about a topic, but through this process, they're actually doing something in regards to that topic. And that we just think is such a rich experience for our kids.
Really just having an impact and showing how an impact can really make change for us, right? Jen, earlier you were talking about really some of the takeaways for the students by participating in this program, and we talked about readiness for life after high school. Talk a little bit more about really how participation through the Global Scholars Program helps kids really prepare for not only college, but whatever their choice may be after high school, workforce, whatever they do. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So I think one thing that it's really benefited a lot of the students that I've worked with is building that confidence to take the first step in the process of whatever it is they want to do. Oftentimes that's the scariest part. How do you put yourself out there and expose yourself for rejection, actually? And a lot of them, one of my students in particular, Maddie Hubbard, was studying prison systems and trying to compare in Norway and also compare in South Africa. And what she found kind of surprised her, that experts that she was trying to connect with in Norway were less willing to work with her. Oftentimes, she said, kind of sent her some condescending feedback, and she learned how to push through that and not to take it personal. And I think a lot of our students, they do extremely well, they're high achieving, and sometimes they struggle with that when they hit that first roadblock. How do they push through it? And she even mentioned in her reflection at the end of the capstone how much that benefited her, to be able to be confident enough to deal with that rejection, keep pushing forward, and to ultimately reach her goal. I think another part of this I love for the students and their participation is it's really open to all kids. And we have a lot of high achievers in our district. We know that, but we also have students that through no fault of their own, sometimes there's barriers to taking those advanced courses that might help them with college applications. In particular, our EL English language learners in the district, because of the language barrier, can't achieve enough background to be able to take those AP, but we're now opening it up at Naperville North next year for those students as well. And it's something that they have a particular connection with because they've come from all over the world. Yep. So they have that global connection already, and now they're put in a position where they can present something that they've created that will be impressive to somebody who's viewing applications for work or college for them.
So as I've listened, it sounds to me like there's really not just this one profile of a student. It's really kind of, but what does a student have to know, or what do you think they should know about the Global Scholar Program before deciding it's right for them?
Well, I think that the big takeaway is the process. I think in the beginning, they're attracted to the certification, but in the end, they value it because of the process. So, to get back a little bit to its value beyond high school, many students use their experience in the Capstone process as sort of the beginnings of, or the material to write a college essay, because they've done really authentic, important things that they hadn't experienced before. Similarly, many students reported using it in an interview process. There's even one student who was supposed to have an interview for a half hour, and she sort of geeked out with the interviewer, and an hour and a half later they were still talking about her project, which was about the intersection of religion and mental health. And to speak to that value to colleges, just this month, Illinois State University's Department of International Business has created a scholarship for any IGS certified student. So it's an automatic $4,500 scholarship over the course of 4 years if you take on international business as a major, and you're awarded also 1 college credit.
Amazing. So even more important than when we think about our student population, to ensure that all of our students really think about how I can fit into this Global Scholar Program and why it'd be relevant and important for me.
If there's time, if I could add to, I think for a lot of the kids that I had, I'm sure for both of you guys as well, it really opened their mind to not setting their point of view quickly on a topic, because as they all came with their projects and they're super excited about getting into them, a lot of them had already forecast what they thought the outcome was going to be or the best solution. And it was really great as a teacher to watch them go through that research process. And some of them worry and come to me and go, oh, actually, I think I need to change my direction now. But I said, that's exactly what we want to see you doing. Realizing, okay, I've now looked through this more thoroughly. This is the direction I need to take, shows that you're growing as a learner.
So as you've watched and been a part of this program evolve over time, from concept, from one of the first meetings that we had to where we're at today, what's next? What's your hope for the program next?
I mean, I guess probably at a couple different levels. We continue to want to see engagement in District 203. The advantage of a K through 12 district is this is something that lower levels can learn about and have an excitement as they would move towards high school, and something for them to look forward to, something that can even be tiered down to lower levels. As we think about the state level, this opt-in opportunity for districts is something that we would love to see. When I'm thinking 5 and 10 years down the line, would love to see this continue to scale, and that more and more districts are opting in, having those rich and rewarding experiences for students. In the dream, in a decade and in 15 years, this is something that raises up better students and ultimately better, a richer citizenry in the state of Illinois.
Well, when I look back at the whole process and the time, we think about the district mission statement to educate students to be self-directed learners, collaborative workers, complex thinkers, quality producers, and community contributors. Isn't that what's happening in this program? It's really remarkable. Thank you for your leadership in bringing this program to our school district and what you're doing with our kids. And thank you to Randy, Seth, and Jen for all that you do to support our students in being college and career ready. Stay with us as we meet students currently enrolled in the Illinois Global Scholar Program and discuss their areas of study.
Stay up to date on what's happening in our neighborhoods and schools, at City Hall, and all across town with NCTV 17 News Update. Emailed directly to your inbox once a day, Monday through Friday, this 2-minute video not only tells you the latest news, but shows it to you, all at your fingertips.
And that's what's happening right here in Naperville.
And the best part, it's free. So sign up today at nctv17.com/subscribe.
Hey guys, how are you today?
Good.
I'm here to talk about how with technology you can make amazing worlds. Come with me. My team and I bring the Halo world to life.
Is that you?
That is me. I wasn't a math genius, and I knew nothing about coding. But you guys do. You guys have the power to change things.
I want your job.
I want you to have my job.
It's my pleasure to introduce three Naperville 203 Illinois Global Scholars. Claire Paschke and Olivia Howard from Naperville Central and Isabella Taylor from Naperville North High School. Welcome to all three of you. So I know I just shared your names with our audience, but why don't you just take a minute and reintroduce yourself. What grade are you in? And I know all three of you are lifelong Naperville 203 students. So tell us a little bit, where did you go to school in elementary, junior high school, and now high school?
I'm Olivia Howard. I'm a senior at Naperville Central, and I went to Ranch Elementary and Kennedy Junior High School.
I'm Isabella Taylor. I'm a junior at Naperville North High School. I went to Naperville Elementary and Washington Junior High.
And then I'm Claire Paschke. I'm a senior at Naperville Central, and I went to Madison Junior High and Riverwoods Elementary School.
So earlier in this episode, we were learning about just really all that goes into the Illinois Global Scholar Program, and it sounds like an amazing program, a lot of work. What motivated you to want to go into this?
Well, me personally, I attended the Illinois Global Scholar Summit last year with Ms. Wiegand, and after learning about the program and what it stood for, I just knew that I wanted to be a part of it. And then what interested me most was how that I could choose any course of action I wanted or research any issue, and I really was interested in that.
Great.
Yeah, and I think that going off of that, one of the main pulls for this course is definitely the actionable piece, because you can't necessarily get to that extent in any other opportunity. So we are super privileged to even have it, and so it was definitely a sell to be able to create something and not just research it.
Amazing.
Yeah, I feel like so often, in classes we get information that we have to memorize and kind of, give back on tests, but being able to take something that you're really passionate about and spend a whole semester researching and ultimately creating a final product that you can implement was really, really cool.
So as educators, we often talk about, you hear from parents, community members, friends, like, what do you want to do when you grow up, right? The real question to ask is, what problems do you want to solve? And it sounds like this program, the Global Scholar Program, really approaches education that way. So tell us about, what did you choose? What was your question? What was the problem that you were trying to solve?
Right. Well, I asked what is the most effective way to aid women's education in South Sudan, specifically the inequity there, and with the civil war going on, and what are the different issues currently in that in that state. So I ultimately discovered that I came up with 4 different factors that were really the push for the inequity between men and women's education, and one of them being menstruation, especially for in-school children, women who are already going to school. So I ultimately created a tutorial, animated video, in which that could be deployed through NGOs or women's groups in order to raise awareness and really solve many solutions for homemade products like that. So.
Wow, that's very cool.
I talked about the lack of human rights in El Salvador, and my compelling question was, how does the American system advocate for the human rights of citizens compared to the Salvadoran? And through research and interviews with NGO presidents and representatives of the United Nations, I created a 10-page white paper, which is an informative report in which you can take action upon. And I also expanded upon how there was a civil war in El Salvador in the late 70s, early 80s, and how problems were never fixed, and how it just created a ripple effect today, and how problems were just never solved.
Wow, great work.
And then I actually looked at the Ganges River in India and the pollution there, and how it impacts the people and the beliefs of those who depend upon the river. And ultimately, I found out that like the main thing was just that children could help and learn so much. So I ended up coding my own computer game that I recently deployed for children in the city of Benares in India.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So it sounds like any community member who wants to question or wonder what we're doing in our schools, can maybe come have a conversation with the three of you, right? I mean,
Yeah.
amazing work. And the work that you're doing sounds so impactful to the world in which we live. How did it impact you? What did it do to you? I mean, as you step back on the work that you've done, how has it impacted you?
Well, me personally, this project meant a lot because my mom was born in El Salvador and she had to flee the country due to the war and all the violence that was going on. So I dedicated this project to her and my grandpa. And from all of it, I just want to advocate for the safety she never had as a child.
That's amazing. Good for you.
Yeah, and I would say just the main thing is I've learned a lot of really valuable skills that I'm excited to take with me next year through college and, throughout whatever career I end up deciding on. And I think, just being able to talk to people who are new and, professionals in their field and be able to have a really in-depth and interesting conversation with them in a really poised manner is something that's going to be really beneficial.
Great.
Yeah, and going off of that, I think one of the biggest skills is kind of that just do it mindset. The actionable artifact isn't necessarily the only thing we created. We had to, as mentioned before, write emails. We had to have interviews and created a narrative. And so in order to really effectively come to those conclusions, the conclusion was the third step out of 7, which is rare. So in order to it really taught us how to effectively always keep moving, even though you might not necessarily always be able to proofread it with someone else or have that overlooking person there every single email. And so it was really independent in that respect. And also I think it taught us a lot about just global mindedness and not necessarily finding a solution that maybe we would originally think, or even the Western system would originally think of, but really find solutions rooted in the context. And that was helped with our experts, rooted in the context and sustainable as well, which is not necessarily as easy to identify as one may think. So it was really interesting covering those two ideas.
You have to just have such a good feeling when you're going through school, you're in a program, to know not only, did I do what the teacher asked, what are the expectations of this course, but I was able to potentially make recommendations to change the world, but to feel personally impacted. You just had that sense of ownership, just has to be incredible. I'm really proud of the work that you've done. 2 seniors, 1 junior. What's next? When you think about, we've talked a little bit about your readiness for that next step, but what are your thoughts about what you'd like to do next?
So I'm very interested in potentially majoring in international relations and economics. Specifically, actually, this project, it completely mirrors what I might want to do in the future, especially with conflict states and maybe integrating that with education and building those sustainable and effective systems from the start. So, yeah.
Okay.
I plan on going into the medical field and becoming a physician assistant, but I would also like to minor in Spanish and study abroad, so having this background and being exposed to different global issues will also help me later on.
Great.
And then I've always been really interested in environmental engineering. And when I was looking at the pollution levels of the river, I got to meet a lot of really cool people who were experts. And one of those people was Dr. Prakasam Tata, who is an environmental engineer right now in Naperville. And he's just really inspiring. And he gave me a lot of really good advice that I look forward to using as I get older and grow in the field.
He is such a passionate person about education too, so I'm sure he is such a great partner for you. As you reflect on your experience, what's been the best part? What has been your favorite part of the entire program?
That's a hefty question.
There were a lot of good parts.
Yeah, seriously.
Right, there is, and that's always hard when you say,
Right.
okay, we have a
Yeah.
great experience. What was the one thing that sticks out?
Okay, so I think that when I look back to those moments of joy, you work so hard, and so one of them being when you get back an email from one of my experts, was Fazil Rabbani, who works with the Global Partnership for South Sudan, and he gave me a contact at UNICEF, so I was able to communicate with UNICEF and kind of get that reassurance that my research and all of the different papers that I had read, and then finally this creation was an accurate reflection of the context and not just a reflection of how I thought I saw the context. So that was really reassuring, and I think obviously it's fantastic to be in contact with UNICEF, but also to have that kind of confidence builder. And then also, I also just think the community that you've built with your classmates and your teachers is definitely one of the greatest parts of Capstone, obviously, other than all of the skills that you built, because it's really, in another way, reassuring, and it keeps you going day by day to be able to talk about all of these different research projects in different contexts and see that passion in the classroom every day.
The best part for me was just having the freedom to do anything, because I know all throughout my life we're always taught what to do, and do this, you get an A. But this time I got to choose what I wanted to do, and also like what you said, just learning about different issues from our classmates. That was just really interesting.
Great.
I completely agree, and kind of going off of that, when I finished my game, I felt good about it, but I wasn't ecstatic, because I knew that the other half was having these kids play it in India. So I actually set up a post-survey questionnaire that they could fill out when they were done playing the game, and reading some of the responses and positive feedback and what they had to say about the game. That's when I truly felt like I had accomplished something worthwhile.
Okay, so as we think about this program moving forward, future students entering the Global Scholars Program, what's the advice you'd give them?
The advice I'd give a student is make sure that you choose a topic that you truly love and that you're passionate about, because you're working on the project for an entire semester. So if you're not completely invested into it, then it's going to be a pretty hard semester for you, because there's so much research and work that needs to go into it.
Okay.
Right, and just to jump off of that, I agree. I think that this course is incredibly intrinsically motivated, and hopefully if you choose, because you create the prompt, and then you also create the ending as well, so it only goes to the extent that you're willing to put in the effort. And so I think that if you choose a prompt that you're genuinely interested in, you get excited about it, and the more you research, the more you're wanting to do, and so it's extremely successful in that way. So
I would say too, just don't give up. There were a lot of moments where you would send out 15, 16 emails a day, and you wouldn't get any response for a week. And you would sit there and you'd be so sad because nobody was responding, and you care so much about this project and you want it to work. But just, doing follow-up emails, checking back in with experts who, they kind of lost interest. It really, speaks to you have to keep going. And
sounds like a lot of great lessons learned throughout the entire program. So that's amazing, and I'm so proud of the work that you've done. And I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining me on this episode of School Scene, and for providing a more detailed look at the Illinois Global Scholar Program.